Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So glad to have you here today. I'm really excited about today's guest, and you will absolutely adore her as I do. And if you're tuning in to the Heal Your Hunger Show for the first time, welcome. Really glad that you're here. The Heal Your Hunger Show is all about overcoming emotional eating, and I have been really a professional emotional eater in my lifetime, and then for the past 30 years have been heavily invested in overcoming emotional eating and helping others to do the same. So thousands of people have, been touched by the Heal Your Hunger work, which wasn't always called Heal Your Hunger, but it's really all about helping people identify and heal the underlying causes of their emotional eating. So it's a great topic because it affects so many people. And so if you're here for the first time, welcome, and I hope that you'll hear some things that really help you and support you on your path of overcoming emotional eating. So my guest today is Jodi Cohen, and she is a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, where she's combined her training in nutritional therapy and aromatherapy to create unique proprietary blends of organic and wild-crafted essential oils. And this helped her heal herself, and we're going to learn a little bit more about how that happened, and she is amazing. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Miss Jodi, welcome. Glad that you're here.
Oh, it's an honor, Trish, and I love what you're doing. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. And I love your oils. They are amazing, and they are, they're in a class by themselves, that's for sure. So, but let's start first with your story. You obviously had a personal experience with oils that really catapulted you into this entire new passion and business. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I had been practicing nutritional therapy for a while, and my husband, who was bipolar, needed to be hospitalized. And the minute that he was safe, and it wasn't my job to keep him safe, my adrenals collapsed. And, my kids were super little, and it took every ounce of energy I had to get up, make them breakfast, pack their lunches, and get them to school. And then I would come home and literally crawl into my sweats and just want to watch the Kardashians all day. I had no energy. I love running. That felt like too much. Answering the phone felt like too much. It was probably my lowest of lows. And I had tried pharmaceutical drugs. They had put me on lorazepam after my second was born for postpartum depression. And I didn't know this at the time, but if your methylation pathways are complicated and you don't detoxify well, you can recirculate certain drugs. And that's what happened to me, and it made me feel psychotic. And so I had to pretty much go off of that immediately. So I was I knew I needed to do something. I was at the bottom of the bottom, and I knew drugs weren't my answer. But luckily, I had friends who had a local supplement company, and they came by one day with a huge box of essential oils and basically put them next to me, in my sweats on my couch, and said, "These are going to help you." And I said, "Great. What do I do with them?" And they said, "No, you're really smart and you're really intuitive. You're going to figure it out." And they left. And they left the box next to me, which was good because I didn't really have the energy to get off the couch. And I sat there for a moment and kind of thought, well, I know how to test. I know it's my adrenals. I know how to test for my adrenals. At least I can just see, is there anything in this box that's going to help me? And I got a really strong yes, like a very powerful yes. And that was kind of the first little boost of enthusiasm that I'd had in a long time. And I thought, wow, okay, what is it? And I tested down, and normally I get one supplement, maybe two. I got 5 oils, and that really piqued my curiosity because I thought, that's so weird. 5, what do I do with this? And then I got the idea, combine them. And so then I actually got off the couch and went in the kitchen, and I was such a novice, I got out a shot glass because I had never done this before and started kind of energetically testing how many drops of this, how many drops of this, and I combined it in the shot glass and then put it on my adrenals, which for those of you that don't know, the adrenals sit on the kidneys. The kidneys are about the size of your fist, so if you want to find them, make a fist, line the bottom of the fist up with the very bottom rib, and then right on top is where the adrenals sit. And so that's where I put it. And all of a sudden it was like, if you've ever been trapped in the undertow, and you keep trying to swim to shore and you kind of have that moment where you're like, am I going to die? And then suddenly some magic wave carries you to the shore and you're covered with sand and you kind of, get onto the beach and take that first breath and you're like, oh my God, I'm alive. That was how I felt. It was so powerful. And then my second thought was I could go running, which is like my favorite thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm back. I'm me. And it lasted for a short period and I kept reapplying the oils. And when I realized how well it worked, I thought like, oh, I could do this with other things. I could do something for insomnia. I could do something to stimulate my vagus nerve, which we'll talk about. And I just kind of kept playing, and it was like, my fun little project that brought me joy when everything else was so dark and gloomy. And it didn't take very long. Within a couple weeks, I felt like myself again and finally answered the phone and returned calls and went to lunch with people and started telling them what I was doing. And they were like, oh, we want to try it. And to my surprise, it worked for them too. And they were like, this is so great. We want more. And then I finally went online and was like, someone must be doing this. Like, it's so obvious. And not only was no one doing it, but the way that the oils were communicated were so complicated and confusing that I realized that if I had started there, I would have felt completely unqualified and I never even would have gotten started. And so my takeaway was there are probably a lot of people that are feeling the way I do, and I would not wish that on anyone. So if I have something that can help them, I would like to share that.
That is amazing. That's just beautiful. Yeah, and your business, it's just skyrocketed, and people have just flocked to you because you have oils that are unique blends. So you want to talk about that, about how this blossomed into this unique business?
Yeah, it was a little bit of an accident. I kind of went to a conference with my people, and it was really well received, and then I just kind of threw it online. But, my kids were little, so I was mostly mom, part-time, Vibrant Blue Oils, and my background is in investigative journalism, and so I love that. Like, it's super fun to me to figure out, like, I'll give you an example. We have this oil called parasympathetic that I have a background in yoga, and so I knew how important the vagus nerve is. It starts at the base of the neck, winds around each side, and goes through pretty much every organ. And yoga breathing helps to trigger the vagus nerve to stimulate the parasympathetic rest and digest state. That's one of the key benefits of yoga. And I knew that there were electrical implants, kind of like pacemakers, that were implanted to help stimulate that in people, especially people with depression and epilepsy. So I was ever so slightly obsessed with that anyway. And it occurred to me that oils, as I started playing with them, they're highly stimulatory, right? And what I'm doing that's very different than the other companies that are out there is I'm using blends. Single oils are amazing. I love lavender, I love frankincense, they're all good. But there's this interesting synergy when you combine them. Like, the parasympathetic oil is clove and lime. So clove is highly stimulatory, and it's very high in eugenol, which has tremendous healing potential. This is, what's used when they used to use it to numb the teeth for cavities. It's great for healing. Lime, which we combine it with, has the smallest molecules. So the skin is very permeable, but if you break the molecules down even smaller, it's even more permeable. So now you have this new hybrid that's highly stimulatory and very permeable into the skin. So that's really what I'm doing with the blends, is combining oils in a way that they almost make something different. The sum is greater than the parts. And so, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's super cool.
Okay.
And it's true. I remember you gave me a adrenal blend, for my adrenals, and I love it, and I use it. I really use it because I know, adrenal fatigue and just exhaustion is pretty common for emotional eaters, because we're always, we're not only eaters, we're overdoers. And so we're always extending ourselves too far. We're saying yes to too many things, and we're exhausted, and we use food to prop ourselves up, right? And so
that's me. I coffee and stress. I was totally that type A junkie.
So it's really, to have that adrenal blend is really good for me, because, while I live a lot more balanced life than I used to, it's still easy. I think my adrenals, because I have exhausted them, they're more susceptible to getting tapped out. Like, if I'm just getting over a cold, and boy, I didn't really have cold symptoms that were very bad, but I got adrenal symptoms on account of having the cold, and I was really wiped out this past week. So I just was, smelling my oils oils, putting them in my hand and giving some deep breaths, and it's just so amazing. So I love that about your oils, and also just the love and care you put into them. I know there's some big companies that are really blowing it out, but they don't. To me, you miss that love, these are like Jodi, like Mama Jodi oils, and so.
I mean, they all, there's, actually I write about this in the book, liquids can carry an energetic resonance, and there was a Japanese researcher who did some really great work on that and kind of took pictures of water and how it changed when it was exposed to different thoughts and ideas, and oils are the same thing. So I do think intention is really important. I'm looking through my book, I'm like, wait, where is it? But there was one other thing that I wanted to say with the adrenals. Like, yes, if you think about a race car, right, they keep going around the racetrack and they have pit stops so that they don't blow a tire or, right, burn up their transmission. And I think people, especially when we are so busy and so motivated by stress, we forget to have those little pit stops. That idea like, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah. I think that the adrenal oil kind of gives you that little pit stop. So if you literally are running a marathon, I used to run marathons, and you take the cup and squish it down and drink it while you were running, so you didn't even have to stop to drink water. But, you can do that with the oils. You can keep them with you in your purse and apply them as you go.
Yep, that's so great. It's just beautiful. So talk about some of the other issues that the oils have, some of your other blends and how they help people with specific issues.
Yeah, I think, for emotional eating, part of it, the hunger impulse is really driven by the hypothalamus, right, in the brain. Mm-hmm. And speaking of kind of going around the racetrack and burning out, what happens with the body's stress response is, the hypothalamus is constantly always gauging what's going on in the body and the environment and taking in all this information. And then if there's something that's stressful, it triggers the pituitary to tell the adrenals to release the stress hormones. But there's also the feedback that the hypothalamus is constantly monitoring, like, okay, do we have sufficient cortisol, which is a stress hormone, in the system? Can we turn it off? It's like the thermostat. You want it to be 75 degrees, not 95, so it turns off at a certain point. But what happens if it's constantly bombarded with signals? It's like, my kids have friends over all the time. Yesterday there were 8 kids at the house, and at one point they were all trying to talk to me at once. For any of them, I'm like, wait, we need to pause. We need to take turns. And I think your body gets overwhelmed in the same way. So just like, if your phone is glitching, you can just reboot it and suddenly it works fine. Sometimes your body needs that reboot. So we have an oil that you can apply kind of right here that helps to reboot the hypothalamus. And that can help with, I think one of the things that makes me very sad about any eating issues is people blame the person. They're like, oh, it's your fault. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's a glitch in your physiology that you just need to reboot, and it will help you be back in balance so that you can deal with it. Like if you think about it, we're different people when we're hungry or tired. I live in Seattle, which has constant traffic, and I'm amazed. There are days when people will cut me off and I am in a parking lot and I don't care. I'm like, oh, well, maybe they're in a hurry. And there are other days where 4-letter words tumble out of my mouth. And what's the difference between the two? I'm technically the same person. It's kind of how imbalanced am I? And the more we can give ourselves that sense of balance and resilience, the easier it is to make really hard changes in your lifestyle.
So when a person's feeling stressed, like they're just sort of coming apart at the seams, what would they use?
So definitely the parasympathetic. That works pretty immediately. And what you're doing, the vagus nerve kind of signals the downstream organs. Like it actually releases the neurotransmitter acetylcholine and slows your heart rate down. Okay. And so you can apply it. It's most accessible. The vagal ganglia, if you go ahead and do this with me, right behind your earlobe, there's this bone. That's the mastoid bone. Yep. That is kind of the area where it's most accessible. Okay. So you can do that. I have so many, thousands of clients who are like, I carry it in my car. It's like I do not leave home without it. And the other really quick fix is the Adrenal Blend that you're talking about. And you can just smell it. I used to get anxiety attacks, often in supermarket lines. I don't know why, but all of a sudden I would feel overwhelmed and like almost claustrophobic. And just standing there and smelling it, I could feel myself kind of grounding and coming back into myself and feeling better. So that's a really good one, especially when, healing is a process, right? And we go from our deepest low to kind of gradually coming up. When you're at that deepest low, you need something like that to kind of like keep you balanced and keep you on track. So that's a great one.
That sounds amazing. And is it good, are other ones better to put in your hands and smell, or are they all better to put, like the adrenal one, would it be good to put that behind your ears as well?
Well, that's a really excellent question. So there are, smelling is actually the most effective way to get things into the body because it goes directly from the olfactory bulb into the limbic system. If you look at a picture of the brain, the olfactory bulb is right next to the limbic system, and nowhere else in the body is the brain more accessible. So that's honestly the fastest route. But some people, a lot of the people that find me, have been to like 30 doctors and spent tens of thousands of dollars, and they really don't want to do it wrong. So what I try to do is give them a roadmap. I tell them you can smell it. If you want to apply it over the organ, that's great. And then sometimes people have really good intuition, and they just say like, it seems to work if I apply it on my wrist, which is a great point because there's good blood flow and the skin is pretty thin there. So I guess what I say is these are suggestions, and then you can follow your own intuition and let people take it from there, because I would never want to, sometimes I think we all on some level know what's right for us.
Yep.
And I want to encourage that.
That's beautiful. Well, and there's something so healing too about, I love putting them in my hands and, smelling them. For the ones that smell really good, it's just really enjoyable.
Well, what's interesting is the body does know what it needs, right? Like, people who crave chocolate when they're on their period, they need magnesium. If you crave a hamburger when you're pregnant, you need the iron. Similarly, you're very drawn to what your body needs. Like, for example, one of my key issues was my gallbladder was really gunky. The bile wasn't flowing, and so then the estrogen was reabsorbing. It was this whole vicious cycle, which is pretty common in women who've had a couple kids and are high stress and in their 40s. So anyway, the gallbladder oil that we have smelled like candy to me. It was so amazing. I could not get enough of it. And I did it pretty religiously for a month. And, we intentionally designed the bottles to be small and kind of last as a dosage. We're not Costco. We don't want you to have tons of stuff that you don't need. Mm-hmm. And anyway, once my gallbladder started flowing and the motion sickness went away and all those symptoms that are associated with the gallbladder, it didn't smell the same. It didn't smell bad, but it wasn't, it's like when you're having your period and you really need chocolate. It's a very different feeling than when you it's like you could take it or leave it.
Yeah, no question about that.
Yeah.
So most of the people that come to you are women, it seems like. So what are some of we talked about adrenals, we've talked about hunger, and hypothalamus.
Sleep.
What else?
Sleep.
Sleep.
So a lot of, I actually think if you're not sleeping, you're not healing. And this is for two reasons. It's because all of the organs kind of detoxify when you're sleeping, but the brain detoxifies. This is what's so interesting to me. It is only during sleep that the brain actually shrinks by 60%. And this lymphatic fluid combined with these glial cells sorry, that's my dog, move through it and kind of drain out the toxins. But you can't do it when you're awake because you need your brain to be on. It's only when you're sleeping. So if you're not sleeping, you're missing that huge opportunity to detoxify. And so we have an oil that helps with sleep. One of the things that happens, there are different issues with sleep. There's kind of the challenge of falling asleep and then staying asleep. When it's a challenge following asleep, it's mostly that the sleep hormone is melatonin, and it's released by the pineal gland in response to darkness. The stress hormone is cortisol, and they work in tandem. You're supposed to have high cortisol to wake you up in the morning, low melatonin so you're not sleepy. And then as the day weans on, the cortisol is supposed to drop, and the melatonin is supposed to go up. But because our body is really smart and prioritizes survival, if you think you're going to die, it's not a good idea to fall asleep. So if you're in any kind of stress, even if it's just watching the news and not agreeing with something that's going on, your cortisol is going to be really high, and that naturally forces melatonin down. It's like a teeter-totter. One has to be down for the other to be up. So that's what happens to a lot of us. We're exhausted, but we're so wired and tired and worried, and we can't shut down our mind. So we have a blend called circadian rhythm, and it naturally triggers the pineal gland to release melatonin, and you would apply it top of the head, above the ears, and back of the head before bed. And it kind of helps you fall asleep. Like the first time I created it, it was like a horse tranquilizer. Like literally I was supposed to go pick up my kids, and I was so tired. I called a friend and I was like, can you get the girls? And like, I just can't stay awake. I mean, it was crazy. So it just helps. It's like the phone reboot. It kind of puts your system back on its natural circadian rhythm cycle.
That is just beautiful. How amazing is that? I mean, it seems very counterintuitive, and it wasn't really, until I met you and used your oils that I started like changing my mind about this, because it just seems so woo-woo and strange and not real.
That's, I totally agree with you, and I didn't like the way it was presented, and that's actually why I wrote my book. Like, I spent 5 years looking in every bookstore online constantly. I'm a researcher, and I'm like, why is nobody writing? Like, it's so obvious to me how these are working and the science behind it, and no one's talking about it the way that I think they should. And so finally it occurred to me. I think someone actually said to me, they're like, maybe you need to write it. And I was like, I think I do. And so I did.
Beautiful. So tell us about the book, and this is for a novice, obviously, and tells them, or not only, but it's a good one for somebody like me who really doesn't get it.
Yeah. But for someone like you who already understands, basically what I did is I combined my background in nutritional therapy, which is kind of saying, when people come to me with symptoms like varicose veins, that's often related to the liver. So I don't treat the symptom. I try to treat the underlying condition so that the symptom goes away. And so I really focused on the symptoms, the underlying conditions, which are stress, sleep, digestion, detoxification, blood sugar imbalance, and inflammation. And my intention is to teach people to fish. So to help them to understand what's out of balance and how can oils play a role in fixing it. It's not the only piece of the puzzle. If you're going to keep eating Pop-Tarts and you're gluten intolerant, it's not going to be your magic bullet.
Right.
But in combination with what you're teaching, lifestyle changes, diet, other things, it's like biking with the wind at your back as opposed to into the wind. It just helps you with your intention, goals, and journey.
That's awesome. Tell me about your kids. Like, how into this are your kids?
Well, I have 2 kids. My daughter is 13, and she is my best salesperson. She's so funny. She goes on these retreats with her school and for camp. She takes all the oils. I get all these emails from the parents like, my daughter loves this sleep oil. I wound up having to go to pick up with like several kits because all these kids are into it. And she's great. She's super smart. What my kids use the most, they really love Epsom salt baths. Are kind of fabulous for detoxifying, because the skin is your biggest organ, and if you can help pull toxins out through the skin, it kind of lightens the load for the kidneys and the liver and all the other organs. So she asks for that every night, and we either use lavender or she kind of picks what oil she needs. She really gets it. My son is funny. He's 11, and he he's like, Mom, I'm not so into your hippie stuff, but he does like certain oils. Like, he knows he gets motion sick, and he knows that the gallbladder one always makes him feel better, so he calls that his motion sick oil.
Wow.
So it's interesting.
That's really sweet. Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful way to help people that's obviously non-pharmaceutical and straight to the heart of the problem, really.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit? I want to circle back to the vagus nerve concept and tell us more about the vagus nerve, because I think this is something that a lot of people, including myself, don't know enough about.
So it's interesting. So some of the practitioners that we're friendly with had been giving me these great praise reports and saying this parasympathetic oil is amazing for autistic kids. Like, it totally puts them in balance. Like, I actually had Elisa Song, who is a mutual friend. 2 of her clients called me practically in tears, like, oh my God, nothing has helped our child so much. And I thought, this is so interesting. I wonder why. So here's what I've learned. We were talking about the brain drains the toxins, and if you think about it, the brain is a hydraulic system. It needs to drain down to actually get to the system and get out of the body. And the bottleneck is often the neck. And that could be like if you have any kind of concussion where, the actual physical structure where the fluid drains can be a little bit compromised, or any kind of toxins, and that can include like viruses, even a lot of the dental infections. What happens, the dental infections live here, and that could be gum disease, it could be a root canal, it could be a cavity with heavy metals like mercury, it could be a wisdom tooth that didn't come out right. All these things, all these toxins are trying to drain down too. And the lymph system is concentrated on the sides of the neck, under the arms, and along the bikini line. And that's what the lymphatic system is doing, is it's trying to pull it down. But it's a little bit, have you ever stayed at a hotel that maybe has a capacity of 50 and they've got 100 people?
Yeah.
And you keep on the elevator, like it comes and you try to go up so you can go back down. It's always full, and it's ridiculous because it's overcapacitated. If you have an overcapacity of toxins, the same thing is happening in your body's elevator, lymph system. It's getting stuck here. And nerves are highly sensitive to metals. This is like the theory that children with autism have vaccine injuries, that the metals cross the blood-brain barrier and then get a little congested here. And so basically it makes the vagus nerve toxic. And several of my practitioners are telling me we're finding this in all of our patients. And so, if you've ever heard the correlation between the root canal and heart attacks, think of it. Here's the logic. So there's a root canal, there's an infection, the infection gets into the lymph system, gets into the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is what triggers the neurotransmitter acetylcholine to slow the heart rate down. So all of a sudden that door is closed, the heart rate isn't slowing down, you have a heart attack. So how do you open it back up? How do you fix this? How do you get these autistic children who, all of the weird movements that they're doing is an attempt to manually override an impaired vagus system. So you can do it by topically applying this vagus parasympathetic oil. And it's great because it triggers all of the downstream digestive organs, like it has the stomach releasing acid, the pancreas releasing enzymes, the gallbladder releasing bile. If you have constipation, it helps with motility. SIBO and IBS, it's really kind of a housekeeping wave, like the food is supposed to stay in the small intestine for a certain period of time and then move along. If it doesn't, then it starts to acidify and ferment. So this really helps everything. But the key thing is that what happens with your body when something's kind of in shock is it goes into lockdown, right? We're like locked and we're stuck. So this helps unlock it. It releases it so that it can then start to get back in balance, because the body does want to get back in balance. That's why you can heal your hunger. That's why you can heal from these things. Once you're in balance, it's like in Seattle, the roads are always under construction. So we'll have a freeway that technically has, in theory, 4 lanes, but 3 of them are closed. So what happens? There's traffic, right? Because it can't get through. And then when the construction ends, no traffic. So toxins are trying to drain from their brain. There's congestion and traffic. If you open up the freeway, suddenly, it drains in combination with sleep and other changes. But
sure,
that's kind of the point.
You have such an amazing way of explaining things. I just love it. It must be the journalist in you. I mean, you can really describe things that it becomes really easy to understand and very visual, which I am very visual. So I just love your little examples.
I think it's from being a mom, right?
Yeah, that's probably true.
Being a mom is really being a marketer. It's a super toothpaste,
That's great. Well, that's amazing. And that you really, you've done a good job marketing that oil, because I have to get my hands on that one. I don't have that one. So that just sounds amazing. For people who want to get their hands on Jodi's Vibrant Blue oils, you can go to her website, which is vibrantblueoils.com, but I will also put that on our website here underneath this show, and also a link to her free gift. You want to tell us about your gift?
Yeah, so the first chapter, I'm giving you the first chapter of my book, which really talks about why I think essential oils work. And it's great because, it's great. I just want this information to be out in the world. And then if you like it, you can read more. But I spent a lot of time. I really am quite proud of the research I've compiled and the dots I've connected. So I hope that you take a look at it.
Great. Well, get your hands on that. Just go to healyourhunger.com on this particular show, and you will get that information and that free gift. So thank you for that. That's sweet. Well, thank you. And thank you for being here. It's just always lovely to talk to you, and I just love the gift that you're giving this world, with your oils and their unique blends. So thank you so much for that, and I'll be talking to you again soon, I'm sure. And to everybody who's tuning in, thank you so much for doing so. Please leave a review on iTunes. That helps us get the word out even farther and wider, so you can help us do that. So thank you for that. And everybody just have a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this show and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.